My Lords, there has been such a remarkable degree of unanimity of view, especially from the voices from Northern Ireland on this topic, that I worry that I may start by saying some things that sound a little harsh. The first is, I don't accept the proposition that Northern Ireland voted to remain in the European Union. That question was not on the ballot paper. The question on the ballot paper was whether the UK should remain in the European Union or leave. And the fact that a certain geographical part in this UK-wide vote happened to vote one way or another is merely a fact of historical interest. It has no legal or practical effect. It's like saying London voted to stay in the European Union. What one means is the majority of people in London voted for the UK to stay in the European Union. That's perfectly true, but nothing flows from it. And to imply or claim that something flows from it in the case of Northern Ireland, I think is a mistake. And the second thing I'd want to say is that I do rather resent, especially having myself been a staunch supporter of Brexit in 2016 and still, the fact that debates like this are used by certain colleagues, not least the noble Baroness whom I am following, to continue to make the claim that everything is the fault of Brexit. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we reversed it all and went back and joined the European Union? There's very little basis for that claim. Now, I discovered something very interesting in the course of this, because I suspect, like certain other noble lords, are not great experts on vehicle type approval. I assumed that the Windsor Framework, which, remember, was going to give Northern Ireland the best of both worlds, the Northern Ireland Protocol was going to give the best of both worlds to Northern Ireland. So I thought that would mean that in the case of Northern Ireland, they would bask in the luxury of being able to choose between a rich array of vehicles emanating either from Great Britain or from the European Union as suited them. But in fact, I discover, and I'm going to quote here briefly from the Vehicle Certification Agency, that's the UK Vehicle Certification Agency. But while the EU and UKNI type approvals, note the plural there, follow the same legislative requirements, in other words, they have to have the same content, they are considered as separate legislative frameworks. The GB type approval scheme is another separate legislative framework. So, in fact, having the best of both worlds in the case of vehicles in Northern Ireland means having access to neither world, but having access to your own world only. And since manufacturers, as has been explained, are not that keen to manufacture for this relatively small, this delicious, beautifully shaped and richly endowed, but nonetheless relatively small world of Northern Ireland, choice is running low. And the noble Baroness Lady Ritchie explained the difficulty she had in acquiring her car, and I'm sure other stories can be advanced of a similar character. There's nothing at the moment, at least, and I'm grateful if the noble Lord could say that this will continue to be the case when these regulations come into effect. There's nothing at the moment, however, to prevent somebody who lives in Northern Ireland from going to Britain and buying a car and taking it back and I presume, registering it in Northern Ireland, paying its tax in Northern Ireland and whatever. So that can happen, but the result, of course, is that the automotive industry in Northern Ireland, that is the dealerships, but also to some extent those parts of the industry that are involved in maintaining cars and doing all of those things, will be gutted because they won't be selling any cars. Everyone will be nipping over to Britain to buy a car. Of course, they could go across the Republic to buy a car, I presume, but the Republic doesn't manufacture any cars and they're quite expensive. So Britain is the place to go. But that doesn't mean they will necessarily get all the advantages that you will get in buying a car in Britain when there are sales and discounts and things like that, and so forth. So it's not a satisfactory situation. It is not the best of both worlds. That's the point. And that is what was promised to the people of Northern Ireland. Now, the government may say, in other words, this is not working for the people of Northern Ireland. Now, the government may say that this is not a situation of their making. It is a situation they inherited from the previous government, and that, of course, is a perfectly fair point. But one of the consequences of being in government is that problems created by other people land on your plate. So it is for the government to come up with a solution to this. And these instruments do not represent a solution. They are not addressing the problem that exists. And so I second the noble lords from across the House who have asked the Minister to say, what is the solution? Everyone has said this isn't the solution, but what is the solution for addressing these real and practical problems which exist in Northern Ireland? And it's a practical solution that we're looking for, not an ideological one, not one that is to do with whether the EU is a good thing or a bad thing or not, but a practical solution that means that Northern Ireland can have access to vehicles on at least as good terms as the people of Great Britain. I look forward to hearing what the noble Lord Minister has to say about that.